Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. Did you see that? I just got cold and it looked like I got goosed. Inside joke. We were just talking to Rich and he said he had to go lock up his goose. And we thought it was a euphemism of some sort. But no, he actually has a goose. Okay, this is Talking in Stations and the Sunday edition. Here we are with our panelists. Let's say hi to all of us. Elise, Randolph, how are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Very happy to be here this Sunday morning, afternoon, whatever it is.
Depends on where you are. Sutonia is here with us too. How you doing, Sutonia?
I'm doing pretty good.
And our guest today is Rich Richmond. How are you doing, Rich?
I'm doing just well, thank you.
Great. All right. There's a lot to go over today. We're going to talk about Helm's Deep. That's actually really a story that's ongoing. It's playing out right now as we're sitting here. We'll talk about some of the stuff that we saw I think it was just yesterday with a new doctrine called Skybreakers. I don't know if it's a bug zapping doctrine or something. We'll talk about that. Very interesting. A lot of interest in this new doctrine. And we'll also talk about some of the groups that appear to be leaving the legacy side of things, like Siberian Squad and Fire Coalition. And I think we'll talk a little bit about Volta, among other things, like that AT ship that was killed in 1DQ, along with another Titan. Right. All that from memory. At least, how did I do?
I think you nailed it, actually.
Nailed it. Okay, let's get started. First thing we need to talk about is, Caleb just dropped in on us. How you doing, Caleb? We're on air. Turn on your mic.
Yeah, I know. Hi, guys.
All right. Elise, let's talk about, all of us. Helm's Deep. What's going on here?
All right, so in the early stage of the war, when it looked like Pappy was going to kind of go towards Delve, the Imperium were in the process of moving a lot of their capital assets to the system of E30, which they called Helm's Deep. The idea was they were going to camp this system because it's all behind it is a bunch of really nice systems, really good routing systems, really good money-making systems. And essentially, it was going to be an unassailable area of Delve where the Imperium could just, have if they wanted. They never actually really needed to make ISK there or anything, but it was just like, behind this, you're not going to penetrate. This is the areas of Delve that you don't get to touch. And for the first few months of being in Delve, that was very much the case. Going behind there, it wasn't really you can argue that maybe Pappy didn't think it was an objective, but they couldn't get there regardless, right? All the systems are jammed and everything. And Pappy went after other areas of Delve, like the areas around Quirius, the areas around Sact, the area around Fountain, which just so happens to be M2. That kind of didn't work out for them too well. But now this week we saw a big push behind there and coming out right now. And in fact, a couple of minutes ago, I think the first iHub or TCU timers are vulnerable in those constellations behind there. But for the next 4 hours, there's going to be a lot of fighting in Delve to try and reset those iHubs. When you take iHub control, it kind of resets your it resets your complete progress, right? So the Imperium, if they lose the iHubs, they will no longer be able to jam those systems, which makes them incredibly vulnerable because you could sino behind there, you can bring cap fleets in there. But most importantly, you just sino normal standard fleets in there.
Yeah. Well, there's the important thing about this is there's a bit of messaging that happened a while ago, right? So there was a big announcement that was going to be made. I think it was made on Fireside Chat, not necessarily like a public announcement, a semi-public with Fireside Chat. And it was, we got this big plan, everybody show up to this meeting. And they called a huge meeting, and I think they had 2,000 or 3,000 people show up. So it was a big show of support. And they said, this is our plan. We're going to move into Helm's Deep type situation. And it was a little imaginative, right? You can imagine this, all right, our walls are coming down. We're going to back up into the castle and we're going to make it a true citadel. And that's where we're going to do something of a last stand. So it had a little bit of drama attached to it. And then they now say changed plans. And when M2 happened as a change of plans. And that's probably true. But the reason that it's a big deal is because the messaging behind it was very big. And then it then we didn't really hear about it. So when you mark a line in the sand kind of thing and say, like, here's our castle, you basically put something on the table. And when you put something on the table and it gets taken off by somebody else, that's a thing that you look at as progress or not progress. Same thing with the Doomsday Board, when the Imperium said, all right, here's a way of us putting metrics to our defense of Delve, which was, in a way, very smart. Probably not the smartest thing to do was to make that public, because then when those markers were falling and Pro God Legend could point to something and say, look at their metrics, we can prove that we're winning this war, and it worked against them. And I think Helm's Deep kind of falls in that same category. It's something you can put up as a metric, and so when it gets penetrated like it's being penetrated now, that's something people can point to and say Helm's Deep is, in trouble. Helm's Deep is, the walls are breaking and people are hiding in caves, or I don't know. I think Gandalf bails them out in the Lord of the Rings movie or something.
Yeah, you have to look to Asher's coming on the third day. It'll be fine. But
Asher, yeah.
But yeah,
he literally
this
gets lost. He gets lost, guys.
So what happens?
It really goes to show how much the Imperium, how much importance the Imperium puts on maintaining the Hell Camp in M2. Right, they're letting all of this is the trade-off that Pappy are trying to force. Right, they're saying, oh, you want to hold M2? Well, we're going to put a Fortizar in 1DQ. That doesn't work out too well. The Fortizar dies. Oh, you want to do this? We're going to kill a Keepstar in 1 SMEP. Imperium's unfazed. Like, well, we're keeping all your Titans here, so good luck. Have fun with that. And now they're saying, hey, you want to do a trade-off? You want to stay in M2? Well, we're taking all of this territory that you actually really wanted to have. So now Helm's Deep is broken, or at least the process is going right now. I think 2 systems already lost their iHubs that are currently controlled by Tappy, so that's the first crack in there. But Imperium, they're still maintaining that M2 is what they want. They still have, by their estimates, quite a lot of capitals that are stuck in there, and they know that the cost is very high to get those out. Pappy knows the cost is high too, right? 400 dreads is what they got to get just over half of their trapped Titans out. So the Imperium's still saying, hey, you know what? That's an okay trade for us. It's one of those weird dynamics in this war that you don't generally see in other giant, large-scale EVE wars, where both sides are making a decision that they think is the right one for them, and they're adamant that it's the right decision. Both sides are like, you're playing into my hand, you fools. And we're just trying to wait and see which one is actually the fool. Like, we haven't figured this out yet. Someone here is wrong. Like, someone's making the bad call, saying it's the right one, but we do not know which one it is, and neither do these two sides.
What do you guys think? Suetonia, Helm's Deep mean anything to you, or the current situation?
I don't know. I think it's definitely a loss for the Imperium, right? You lose that safe crabbing space. I don't think it's going to disenfranchise the most dedicated PvP players who are already committed to just living out of 1TQ1, and if that ever falls, NPC Delve. But I'm sure there's random people who are in goons who like to make ISK and just chat with each other, etc. Those kind of people are probably going to feel the loss of Helm's Deep. With the new DBS system and the way ratting works now, I think goons will probably still be okay for the most part with the constellation that's behind 1DQ1. I think that's also okay space, but it's definitely going to be hard to pack a lot of people in there.
Well, and you could also add that if Pappy doesn't like to exchange queens, locking them up is fine. That's the same thing, right? If goons are willing to exchange Titans 1 for 1, or even worse, then locking them up in this gridlock, in this castle, is a great thing, really, even though some got out.
All right. We also have Gargorin here, who's joined us. He's from The Daily Show, one of our researchers. But he also happens to be in Horde. How are you doing, Gargorin?
I'm doing all right. So one of the things about Helm's Deep is that since it's the ratting space, that's most useful for the newer players in the Imperium, which since Goon Swarm, the largest corporations of Goonswarm, like Karma Fleet, are a more non-selective recruiting, like Brave, Test, and Horde is would be a large portion of those corporations. It might not affect the people who are the higher SP, more PvP focused people, which kind of like how in Horde space, I haven't really used Horde space to make my ISK in most of the past year, except for industry, but a lot of their fleet numbers from some corporations might be affected by that. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about like the actual value of these systems. I get the feeling that the people that are actually ratting these systems are just doing it because they can, and it's kind of safe. I don't get the feeling that they really necessarily need to. I mean, you saw the Imperium do.
Sorry, were they even ratting there? I didn't take notice if they were or weren't.
There were a few systems that have really good TrueSec behind Helm's Deep that were kind of active ratting pockets or ratting systems. I was just looking at Dotland. There's 3 systems that crack 7,000 kills in a day, NPC kills in a day, which is quite high, right? Not giga high, and it's not every system. It's just a handful of them. It's the good ones.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling it's not necessarily like this is going to break the back. I don't even think even newer players are going to really experience too much of the pain. They've already been experiencing it right now. I think all the players that are in the war right now have alternate income streams that they can rely on that doesn't rely on their space. Or you don't see like Brave pilots or Horde pilots jump cloning back to drone lands to grind some ISK and then come back. Maybe some players do, but that's definitely not the majority.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a messaging thing, at least. And that's kind of what I was pointing at. I don't know if even it had practical use. It seems to me that it was a response to what was happening at the time that it was announced. It's just that it was a major announcement, again, with a huge showing on their fireside chat because they had this big announcement. Again, it was like 2,000 people or something. I remember it being a significant moment. And then Helm's Deep got announced. So for it to be just like yesterday's news seems like there should have been some messaging saying, let's pivot this narrative, and now M2 is where we're going, and that sort of stuff. And that is definitely the logical military change. What was happening at the time that Helm's Deep was announced was the strategy was to go in and take Delve and make it unfarmable, which means that people who wanted to participate in money-making, harvesting kind of stuff like mining asteroids or shooting down NPC pirates for ISK, that's the kind of stuff that was being deprived. So Helm's Deep was an answer to that, saying, we're going to lock this area up. You'll be able to do all that stuff. Don't quit on us. We still can provide you farmlands to work, basically. And I think that situation is old. Go ahead.
I was going to say that Goons still have access to like some pretty good systems behind 1DQ1. And if you actually take a look at the NPC kills in Fountain, there's actually quite a lot there. And Goons could, in theory, if they're really bad on ISK and they want to go and farm in nullsec, and I'm sure Goons have SIGs that do incursions in highsec and mining in highsec. But there's like 3 or 4 good constellations in Fountain that the initiative hold, which I believe any member of the Imperium is allowed to go over and rat in, especially like the north of Fountain, like the top left on Dotland.
Yeah, and you're right. Behind 1DQ is actually the best territory in Delve to rat and stuff. And there's a pocket back there, or a constellation. But the idea that you needed that even might have changed, right? It feels like we're in a different phase of this war, where like the ratting concern and the concern of people sticking around because they need that seems to be out the window right now, because I think the heat of this war is just so hot now that it's all about the war. Like, and there seems to be alternative ways for funding of the war. So even that ratting doesn't even seem that important. So it might be a relic of the past, but it is still like, as you said, at least people were still using it. So it is getting, at this point, like just ravaged. Like that whole area back there is broken.
Yeah, if even though you don't have any disclosed information, but if the actual bond filled, then I don't think they're short on cash. Maybe individuals are, but the organization is definitely not short on cash.
Yeah, they're
And Goon
definitely
said-
making it rain with the 21 trillion in war bonds or whatever that they had raised.
Yeah, and goons are definitely not stingy with SRP, right? So you normally get almost the full thing back for subcaps at least. So if you're just a member that's fighting daily and you don't need ISK yourself for your own like personal goals or whatever, then you should be fine generally.
And that's really the dynamic that the war is into right now. It's these daily fights over iHubs, over TCU timers. They're spread out through constellations because of just how Aegis Solve works. And it just boils down to just constant fighting. I was reading a Reddit post from someone in Legacy where they were just like, oh yeah, I was at war I was fighting for 10 hours constantly, always having someone to shoot. It was like there was no empty time. It was just 10 hours were gone in the blink of an eye. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Like that's what the war is facing right now, especially as these constellations behind Helm's Deep start becoming vulnerable.
It's almost reminiscent of trench warfare, right? Even though it's actually not a line.
Yeah, it really does feel that way because you're not having these big set piece battles. You're having skirmishes that can take place anywhere, and they're moving between nodes. And the fleets have to be very fast to respond. They can't just sit in one system. They've got to bounce. And the defenders have a certain advantage. The attackers have a certain advantage. And that's really been playing out the last 2 weeks. And I think, it's been good for both groups. It has really helped Pappy get back on their feet after M2. Obviously, the breakout of getting most half, depending on who you ask, of their supers trapped out, that was a huge help. But it definitely does feel like Pappy last week they were kind of getting their groove back. Now they're in full grind mode. And it's important to see how the Imperium are going to respond to this.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be many set-piece battles anytime soon. It seems that they're going to go for the tried old tactic of winning the iHubs and winning the TCUs, putting a jammer down and then signing in and destroying the structures and then moving in step by step. I'm not too sure when the next set-piece battle is going to be, especially after M2.
I don't know, hubris kind of gets to your head and it turns off those logical parts of the brain and you just see shiny titans in front of you and sometimes you just go for it. I don't know what it is, but you get some forward momentum going. And
walk
you
off
just,
a cliff.
Yeah, your brain just stops working right? You just go for it.
It's like when that Pokemon Go came out, people were walking off cliffs and stuff. Like, you got to get that water creature, whatever it is. Yeah, all right. So that's what's going on in Helm's Deep, and that's why we're looking at it. I think Rich brought up a good point. What's the next giant set-piece fight that's going to happen? It probably won't happen until probably 1DQ. It kind of feels like it all comes down to that system, that capital system that has a ton of invested wealth by the Imperium in it. M2 will dissipate one way or the other, I think. Like, it may take a long time, but it feels like that will unravel one way or the other, but it won't become a focal point unless there's an accident. There's always room for accidents in the game. But 1DQ seems to be the if there's going to be an appointment battle, it may be 1DQ, or it may not even be 1DQ. That's kind of what
75% of all the assets are in 1DQ, right? Something like that.
Well, all the pride is in 1DQ. I mean, 1DQ falls.
No, all the assets matter. All the assets. About 75% of all wealth that is meaningful to the war is in 1DQ.
Do you know how much wealth is in 1DQ? How big is their treasure?
I know how centralized Delve is, and I would pretty much guesstimate that it's 75% or thereabout. If you're not counting, of course, the value of distributed structures, but you shouldn't count that. That's written off already. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Well, okay. You don't have any idea how much wealth is in there, do you?
What, the tally, the complete value?
Yeah.
Of everyone's assets, or just the organization's assets?
The organizations. I'm looking for some news.
Well, you got the bonds, and you should pretty much know that there's about what 700 titans or something like that.
All right. So that's Helm's Deep. Let's leave that there. And that's 1DQ. That's probably where the next, if any, big set piece battle is going to be. But until then, we'll see body blow after body blow going back and forth over iHubs all over Delve. M2 situation will resolve itself. It will definitely resolve itself in 30 days if Pappy keeps their iHub. Then I think you see a pretty easy escape, right, Elise?
I don't know. I do think M2 could still get dicey for either side here, just because the Imperium has invested so much and Pappy has invested so much. They're not going to let that investment go just because a jammer's up, right? But you mentioned that the Pappy have to keep that jammer up for another 25 days or so. That's really the ebb and flow of this war right now. The Imperium know that Pappy want to hold these jammers hold these iHubs until they can put a jammer up. So that gives them the ability to attack something, right? So they can be offensive in here, in Delve, right? They don't have to just be on the defense. They can start taking things away. And there really is a big ebb and flow to that. We've seen the beginning of the year, it seemed like the Imperium were just rolling through everything. They're taking timer after timer after timer, halting progress, keeping the camp up. They seemed to just be on a roll. And then Pappy slowly starts getting back into it. There's weird similarities that we kind of can talk about. When Pappy moved into T5Z, which is right next door to 1DQ, in one of the first days, they lost a Ragnarok to the Goons. They lost a Revenant, a big faction super. And, it just felt like there was this weird turning point around that time where the Imperium kind of were like, oh, you're trapped in here with us. Like, this is what we wanted. And now you see like that dynamic is getting mirrored, right? You saw 2 avatars die in 1DQ. You don't lose a faction super, you lose an alliance tournament ship. Like these just weird similarities are just going back and forth, all in Delve.
It's fascinating, right? Like I can see the enthusiasm that you're seeing, the patterns of a situation, how rare this is, where both sides, as you say, feel like they're winning and they're both fighting it out. Nobody's collapsing and taking off, for instance, and nobody's breaking apart upon entry either. So it's, I think we're in it, right? We're in it for the next few weeks at least, and that is probably one of the biggest, most consequential wars that EVE has ever seen in its entire history. And it's definitely like the resolution of the last 10 or 12 years in EVE Online. It feels like a lot of the wealth is put on the table right now, and this is a big gamble on both sides where everybody could lose. And I think that's what's so exciting about all of this. We're going to skip Skybreakers and actually go to what was killed in 1DQ recently. Let's go to Rich. What was killed in 1DQ? Oh, actually, no. Elise, you told me about this. Do you know some of the story behind that? AT ship, I think.
So I don't know too much of the story. Suetonia probably has a better handle on it, but it was just fascinating, right? So you have EVE's actual boogeyman. In terms of scary people in EVE Online, I think through the history of the game, you have Penif from Israd. You have Rocket X in his prime. If you saw like one of his ults, you knew your ship was going to die. You just didn't know how. But now, like for the last 5 years, uncontested dominance, I'd say, Frederick von Hole, right? He's made it his life's work to just be a spooky guy that will kill Alliance tournament ships. Like that, he decided that was his thing. He wanted to be the Alliance tournament ship killer in EVE, and he absolutely is. He looks on the kill boards. If you use one of these ships, he is coming for you. The level of dedication that he puts into this, the level of planning, it's absurd. Even on EVE levels, it's absurd. Like he'll roll an alt. He'll create an alt out of nothing, pick a random name, fly it, try and act as bait. And if the bait doesn't work on the first try, he biomasses that character and tries again with a different character. He injects straight all the way up. Just absolutely mind-blowing, the level of dedication he puts into this. And, sometimes we probably are making too much of it. Sometimes he probably just lucks into these, but he's definitely a ghost story. And the Cadies that died is going to be telling that story to his kids, right? He died in 1DQ. He's in an Alliance tournament frigate, the Cadies. It's the, I don't know, which Alliance tournament did it come from? Alliance tournament, the one with the Rabisu.
It's from 14, I think. 14, the Blood Raider one.
So the winners of Alliance tournament 14 got the Cadies and the Rabisu. The Rabisu is the logistics. This is like a crewer that can cloak. It's actually like an Ashimu that can cloak. And he had just gotten this ship, and he was camping the 1DQ gate with 500 of his best friends, right? Like he's never alone when he does this. And so
makes you feel safe.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you that sense of security. But that's not enough for Von Hol, right? He goes one step further. He infiltrates Test. You can say that maybe Test invited him in. I don't think they would do that. Maybe they did. I don't know that part of the story. So this is my ghost story version of it. So he infiltrates Test. He gets a character in there. And he has a character in Ares, just a scout shitty Ares. He sends it into 1DQ, it dies. He sends it into 1DQ again, goes to a perch, pretends to cloak, gets decloaked, dies to this Cadies. He does it again. He feeds this Cadies 3 times in a row. So this Cadies now recognizes this character in his Ares in Test as not a threat because he's killed him 3 times already. He goes in the 4th time. He's completely changed his fit out now. He's now armor tanked. He's now resistant to newts, or at least a little bit resistant to newts. And he goes in and he does his spiel again. He gets tackled by the Cadies, but this time the Cadies doesn't instantly kill him like he did the previous 4 times. This time the Ares is tackling him. This time there's backup that comes in and the Cadies dies. And just like that, right under the nose of the Imperium in 1DQ, in their home system, on the gate that they're camping in a fleet, this guy just gets erased by the boogeyman.
I think this Cadies death could be entirely prevented. The fact I actually think this was a bit of a sloppy, assassination.
What? Can we just appreciate how much work goes into that?
A lot of work has gone into it, and I do know a bit more, but this was a very, very sloppy kill because the ult used to bait. By the way, the owner of this Cadies most likely owns other Alliance tournament ships. The person who owns it is a director of the French Goon Swarm Corp. I believe it's their premier francophone corporation.
Chevalier d'Ordre.
Yes, the Chevalier d'Ordre, if my French is well enough. In late 2019, during the 100% loot drop event, they pulled off a stunt by smart bombing their own Taipan, which carried about $1,200 worth of plex, a whole bunch of officer mods, and on the kill mail is a Komodo with an officer smart bomb, a Tiamat with an officer heavy newt, a Hydra with a officer level jam. So they definitely have more AT ships and more money, but what was more surprising was the bait Ares was not a fresh ult. This wasn't something that you could just roll in biomass. This was Frederick von Hol's one of his personal accounts.
Yeah, it's an ult that he had used before.
Even on the front page of Zkill, you can see Offline Corporation. You can see all of the friends that he rolled with. I don't understand who was the HR director of that open recruiting test corporation that let his ult in. I don't think it would have mattered because you may be safe in 1DQ. 1DQ may be your home. You may have 600,000, 2,000 people in there. But with numbers, you may have safety, but it's also danger because with an empty system, it's a lot of work. It's hard to sneak ults in there and log off and trap them. With 1DQ, there's all these people here. Nobody notices a thing. Nobody's going to notice 1 neutral, 2 neutral, 3 neutral ults sneak in. And that's a lot of danger. But yes, the bait Ares not only died, it wasn't 3 times, I believe it was twice, but not only did it die twice, but it was blatantly obvious it was Frederick von Hol's ult. His Discord name is Russell, and the ult used, if I just scroll down here,
Russell Zamayid.
Russell Zamayid. It was so obvious. And the front page of Zkill, I can see Nyankatsu, Offline Corporation. Like, it's...
Light
I
fish.
would see that ult and think, That's one hull.
Yeah, Polite Fish is also there. That's Lucy Lou's group, and he also flies with Von Hole a lot.
It was honestly, well, then again, he did use the Cadies in 1DQ over the last 3 days. He's got a total of 8 kills on it and 3 kills in the last 6 kills in the last 7 days, and then it died. So I guess he's used it twice.
Yeah, a lot of Von Hole's kills are within a few days of the first time the person gets kills with the ship.
Of course, if he had, if he were better informed, he would have. I would tell him don't use this same thing everywhere.
I just love the idea of because I've seen this before. Have you ever heard the whole cat lady thing and the amoeba or a bacteria that gets into the? Well, there's a parasite that gets into not a cat. That's where it wants to end up. So what
toxoplasmosis is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Can you want to explain it? Because I don't
you would explain it better than me, to be honest.
All right. Well, I'll explain it the way I know it, and that is that what is it? Is whatever it is. Let's call it a bacteria. It's a
parasite.
A parasite, right? The parasite doesn't get into the cat. That's where it wants to end up. So it actually gets into the rat, and it makes the rat have terrible judgment. So the rat will go right up to a cat and look at it and say, like, "What? Are you looking at me?" And the cat will eat the rat, and then the parasite that's tricked the rat now goes into the cat where it wants to be. The reason I call it cat lady because they think that the parasite actually makes it to cat ladies, and that's why they have like 50 cats. But that might be some extra credit stuff. But anyway, I think that's really interesting to infiltrate test because you actually want to kill goons. I love that second level thinking. That's EVE Online like at its best.
And Gregorian does point out something really kind of important that I kind of left out in the Ghost story, right? Von Hole goes after people kind of as soon as they get their ships, before they've, I guess, used their brains a lot. I don't know. While they're still like getting in that honeymoon phase with their ships. This pilot used his ship on February 3rd for the first time. That's the first time he ended up on a kill mail. That's the first time he ended up on Von Hole's radar. And he died 3 days later. That's how vicious this guy is in terms of starting to track. In 1DQ, yeah.
It's like...
Well, what's unfortunate is that several members of Von Hole's team and some of his alts, they didn't make it out. And it does actually give us an idea of what he uses to hunt with and what preparations they made. Mickey Knox, one of his friends, his Loki was fitted with 3 hyperspatial rigs to get in as soon as possible. It also had 2 sensor boosters and a 30-kilometer point and a web and the module for extended webs in the Loki. And not only that, he had a full set of low-grade jackals to make it as hard as possible to jam the Loki as possible. So they were fully prepared for that. I'll link these in a second.
I like it. So he has a gang that's whole purpose is to make sure that he gets the kill, huh?
Oh yes, and the anathema they fitted with a covert Sino also had a scram, and it was directly armored just to tank against EM and thermal damage, and had small cap boosters. They built this to withstand lasers and neutralizers, the signature weapons of the Cadies.
Wild. Well, we know Van Hole is good, but it's so neat to get a bigger glimpse of like how this kind of stuff happens. Amazing.
It is a rare occasion that we get to see the things they fitted, like the Astero fitted with 3 rigs to minimize cloaking delay. Most of the time, their ults and such, get away. But in this case, it gives us just a little bit of idea of what they use, and for somebody who's better prepared, they might predict it next time, but not in this case.
All right, love it. All right, but that wasn't the only thing that got killed in 1DQ. Didn't we lose 2 Titans in there over the last week, I think?
Oh yeah, NC got a couple of Titans. What I've heard was fleet warps.
Yeah, I call that fishing, right? They throw a fleet invite. Somebody grabs it, and then they reel them out, and they put them in a cooler and take them home.
People still fall for that?
Yeah.
Yep.
The interesting thing is that one of the people who I've heard of in a few places was the person who invited the first Titan was a Goonswarm FC a few months ago, so maybe the person just saw the name and recognized it for that reason. And forgot that he left Goons.
All right, so a couple Titans. It's funny, like we're not that excited about a couple Titans, but that AT ship kill was like, it's neat to see a crew come in and take it out. All right, so that's, at least we have anything else in this area?
No, I think that's it. But I always just think it's really funny to see the similarities, right? Like the Imperium got these kills, and then a month, 2 months goes by, Pappy gets the same, I don't want to say the same caliber, but like it's got a similar vibe to it. So just so much back and forth through all like micro levels, macro levels, all the way through. It's so crazy.
All right, one last thing just to kind of get people caught up that have been not really paying attention since the big battle of M2 TAC, but where would you say things are right now, I guess momentum-wise?
I'd say from up until M2, I think, up until the M2 breakout attempt, the first attempt that was kind of unsuccessful. Well, it was unsuccessful by every metric, right? We lost 2 nexus. Up until that point, I think the Imperium was very solidly leading. It was all in their favor. They had a lot of momentum. They had a lot of members. They had old faces coming back. The idea of hell camping your enemies. I think it's something that the Goons can pull off better than anyone else in the game. When I say the Goons, I mean all of the Imperium. And then you see the Initiative go out and start doing their thing, which incredibly successful. So I think up until like that point, the Imperium had every single card in their favor. They had all the momentum. And now I think Pappy are slowly starting to bring it back. Pappy are very dominant in these deep US time zone timers and through European time zone as well in terms of the soft timers. They're very, very good at conquering these soft timers. They've shown a very strong understanding of how Aegis solve fights work, how Aegis timers work. So they've been, I don't want to say they've been stunting on them the last week, but they've been having good results in terms of Pappy versus Imperium. Pappy has been winning these results pretty firmly. Doesn't mean all that much in the scope of things, right? Because in the Imperium's eyes, the more that Pappy wins, the more that they then have to lose. So there's a lot of back and forth there. So these things aren't hugely significant for them. But it seems like Pappy are getting their momentum back. They have a lot of advantages that they're starting to use and utilize really well in Delve. I should make this distinction. I think Pappy are currently winning in Delve. Elsewhere, it's a complete different ballpark. And we'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. But
later on.
The Initiative, what they've been doing, basing out of Curse and going into Catch, they've been setting that place on fire, right? It definitely feels, if you were a Legacy or if you were a member of Pappy that was living in Catch, most likely you were in Legacy, you were feeling that you were at war. You were feeling like stuff in your house is on fire or in your yard is on fire. You're now feeling it. It's not just something, it's not some abstract idea that you're in Delve fighting and back home is home. No, now your house is on fire as well. So the Initiative has been doing like a tremendous job. And this is something that I've wanting to see for them from the beginning, because this is their talent. This is where they thrive. They're, you can put them in a fleet to do random stuff and whatever. They're just using them as like an N+1 type of thing. That's not using them to their strength. Using them this way is effective. And what's important here is the Initiative aren't just living in Curse and messing with Catch, right? They're coming back to Delve for these timers. They're putting full fleets out for these soft timers as well. So they're doing 2 things at once for you. So really, I think the big winners here are probably for the first 6 weeks or the first 7 weeks of 2021 is the Initiative. But in Delve, I think Pappy are just slightly getting an advantage. And it's going to be really important to see what they do with that advantage.
Yeah. All right. Good point. Definitely. The war is like pretty clearly on 2 fronts now. But it seems like the goal is in Delve, so we focus on it more. But But there is a new thing that's come up, and that is we saw it displayed a couple days ago with the breaking into Helm's Deep. We saw Skybreaker doctrine, which is something we haven't really seen, at least at this scale yet. And the way it works is Skybreaker is the Edencom frigate, and it sits on a gate. There's the FC that sits in an eagle, and what everybody does is they basically target their own FC. And when a group is coming through the gate, they blast their FC, and all this electrical conduction hits everything around that FC. And your guys are safely anchored further away from the FC out of range, but everything inside that ball of electricity just gets fried. And we saw 44 Ares interceptors just evaporate a couple days ago. This is an amazing concept that was brought in, or probably theory crafted by Gobbins and executed by Chassa and the Horde crew there. And this is kind of a game changer. I don't know. So, Tony, are you familiar with the Edencraft frigate?
Yeah, I've never actually flown it myself because, I'm still not willing to spend like 700 mil on a specialization skill book because I'm poor. But yeah, I'm kind of familiar with it.
What?
Well, it's more just the principle of spending 700 mil on a skill book.
The skill books were why it took so long after the Doctor was announced to undock it, because we were sourcing it internally at much lower prices.
Well,
I was really excited to see how it would work in practice, and waiting over a month to see it was... I wanted to see it, so that was awesome to see.
This was talked about a month ago?
It was announced at Gobbins' Descender Town Hall.
Yeah. And so this is the first time... You were in this fleet, I know, because I was filming it, and I actually locked onto your ship and saw you there. What was it like?
It was really fun to just see the interceptor fleet evaporate.
Yeah. All right. So the important thing here is Entosis. Interceptors are pretty important to Entosis, right? Like, they anybody want to take this? Like, how do interceptors relate to Entosis warfare?
Sword fleet has always kind of been a thing with the Entosis sword mechanic. It used to be claws back in the day, back when they were nullified. The idea is these interceptors have a under 2-second align time, so it's very hard for you to catch them, if not almost impossible, when they're going from gate to gate. And the idea is they have weapons. They don't do that much DPS, but when you have, like 50, 60 of them, they can probably kill an Entosis ship pretty quickly. CCP did change the mechanics around Entosis about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. It was when I was leaving the CSM, where you can now get remote reps on Entosis ships. So I think Swordfleet kind of fell out of favor a little bit then, because now you can just kind of just put like a big fat thing like a Vulture or Damnation on as your Entosis ship, and you can just remote rep it. And it's not...
Usually when I fly an Entosis alt, it's either a Drake or a Bifrost.
Yeah, so you either want something that's big and has good resist, like a Fax that can have like a huge active tank, or generally something like a Bifrost or Omega, something that's really fast and can just MJD away. But what these Skybreakers are essentially doing is like they're really mobile smart bombing ships. So you can kind of counter Swordfleet a little bit by just putting like some smart bomb battleships or some Max or something, but they're really unwieldy and they're like very telegraphed and obvious. Whereas Skybreakers, being like these small fast frigates, they're pretty they can keep up with Swordfleet, right? So they're really effective.
Well, look, some of their advantages are like they have an area of effect, although they are hitting only 4 ships at a time, each one of those bolts. There's no spool up time, so it's an instantaneous electrical blast that, with enough people, can wipe out multiple, a small fleet, basically. So it seems like it's an interesting counter to Swordfleet. There were other things, though, that could counter Swordfleet that might be even a little cheaper, right? Like Wasn't there a Tengu or something? I may be wrong about that. All right,
These
no volunteers.
Edencom ships have interesting damage application mechanics. I wonder how that goes into play with the whole Eagle. Gagoran, how many are required just to maintain minimal mass? Well, critical mass because of just how low damage these ships are normally.
I'm not sure. I know that we waited until we could. We had distributed enough hulls and skill books to run a full fleet of it.
Well, what is a full fleet? I've heard rumors trickle down the grapevine that you have a rather large minimal, numbers required just to make it work, something around in the regions of 200, 250 plus.
Well, that's kind of what Gobbins said when he initially announced it at his town hall.
But it turns out you need,
I like your citation. It's very careful, Horde guy. I like your citations so that you're not OPSEC leaking. It's good to be careful. All right, well, listen, we're going to take some live footage of Stormbringers. Not Stormbringers. Skybreakers. After this show, I'm going to try to go out there and see if I can catch them in action, like a wild animal photographer, and we'll see how it works out. But that's what we'll do after the show, since Helm's Deep, I think, has a ton of timers happening right now, starting just about in 30 minutes or 30 minutes ago, I forget. Okay, let's, anything else on this new doctrine? It's fascinating. We're going to watch it. I think it can be a game changer for Sovereign warfare. It can also be countered. We haven't seen it countered yet.
Probably on Monday, that when we first tried undocking it, but we didn't really get as much of a chance to use it as on Friday. The Imperium did try a Chemo T3 fleet, but because Skybreakers are really fast, we all but a couple of people managed to get away before the smart bombs and killed a few legions with minimal losses. Like maybe one or two Skybreakers were lost in that.
Yeah, they're fast.
Yeah, one of the neat things about it, right, is you're seeing, I don't want to say for the first time, but it does kind of feel for the first time in a while like a new tactic is evolving. It seems, at least to me, that the Imperium were always the ones that were inventing new tactics. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. But there was always this like very creative vibe coming from them on how they wanted to do things, and they kind of relished that creativity. And now you're seeing Pappy kind of trying to emulate that. And I know there are lots of crazy ideas in the pipeline. I know this is hopefully the first of many. But when these ships first came out, I was talking to someone, I think I was talking to Gobbins, I might have been talking to other people about ways to use this. And there are so many like exciting ways that these could possibly be used. But then you're like sitting talking amongst yourselves and you're like, well, we could just do this with another ship anyway. Why are we trying to force it with these new fun ships that are kind of like really expensive to get into, not only in terms of ISK, but in terms of skill investment in there, right? Because you're asking pilots to spend 2+ months of training the ship that can smart bomb areas, right? Like that's such a niche thing to do. And the ammo is also really expensive because very few people are like, these ships are not all that popular, right? The most popular one's probably the Skybreaker. The
price is the biggest problem so far has been that the logistics, since the JITA is so overinflated beyond what it's worth, that we source them internally only.
Yeah, you definitely have to do a vertical for it because there's like no demand to fly these ships. So the supply is like completely limited. So these guys had to go out and source it themselves and ask these people to do it. And I don't know, but it is very fun. It is very a creative use. We're going to shoot our own guy and the sparks flying out of it are going to kill the bad guys. Like that concept is just fascinating. Yes. I love it. It's just a really clever, hopefully it's not a one-off, right? But like you mentioned, it's a really good way, a mobile way to stop these interceptors from kind of going all over the place.
Yeah. At least
Go ahead.
Last time Horde tried a new crazy doctrine idea, the full fleet of Hicks, you mentioned during the live coverage of the M2 Arbiter that Goblins theory crafts a bunch of crazy ideas, and some of them are terrible, but some of them work great.
Yeah, the Goblins is very well known for this, right? He's won Alliance tournaments before, and he's won those Alliance tournaments or been part of winning teams predicated not on his ability to fly a ship, because his ability to fly a ship isn't impressive. This isn't like a diss or anything, but he's just average, right? But he won those, or he's been part of winning teams predicated on inventive ideas like theory crafting, coming up with neat ways that you don't expect, hiding things in plain sight, stuff like that. So this is definitely his forte. I'm sure there's some other theory crafter that's kind of getting real mad, saying it wasn't just Goblins, I helped too. But unfortunately, we have to attribute it to Goblins because he's the big goofball.
Yeah, he's also very creative. He's got a lot of things going for him. That's why he was our 2020 most influential player of EVE Online. I mean, he's been influential for a while, but we just decided it was, enough ingredients had come together to really put him at the top. And it was like neck and neck with Vili, I think, because Vili has done a lot in 2020 and has done a lot historically. But okay. So Skybreaker, new doctrine, looking at it's exciting. The Von Hole thing, super exciting. The way they execute on traps, even it's like assassination in the middle of a city. It's incredible. That kind of stuff is amazing. It's
when I saw that
crazy.
Yeah, when I saw that, when I saw it was in 1DQ, I was really interested.
Well, okay, so there's more to this war, though. Now we're looking at how big. We're looking at alliances. The health of legacy looks like it's not 100%, but how big are these problems really? We have Siberian Squad that is no longer on legacy side. Now they are fighting for the other side. And you also have Fire Coalition that's being all tangled up by the amount of damage being done in their home, with Volta invading landing in Curse and then invading into Imensia. What's going on there?
Oh, well, that area has been under siege for a while from the Initiative and a few other alliances that kind of moved in there. So Dreadbomb have been down there. I think Red Alliance also left Fire Coalition and sort of joined up and was attacking that area with the Initiative for a while. There's also Simple Farmers who have been just camping the head GP pipe and whoring on some supers around the area. There's Tickle, who took back their own pocket and Straya Post. And recently, Volta deployed to Curse. I guess it's not really a secret now that they're kind of on a contract with the Imperium.
Well, they denied it. So that's a check mark for your what is it, Space Commander?
Starfleet.
They're not on
Commander.
contract. Starfleet Commander said they're not on contract. They're there for good fights. But I asked him if he was sure he wanted to stick with that answer. What do you think, Suetonia?
I don't know. I'm just a grunt in Volta,
I think they have to be on contract. There's no way they're down there for good fights. But he's denying it, so we'll give him that.
Yeah, so Volta are deployed in Curse, not too far away from the Initiative, and Volta are focusing on hitting Wicked Creek and Scalding Pass, which are two floodplain regions, shall we say, that belong to Fire Coalition. They're definitely not as important to them as I think it's what is it called? Insmother is and Deterid, I think, are like the space that they like to crab in the most, and where most of their assets are. And Wicked Creek is a region that I think Red Alliance were living in recently, so the ADMs aren't super high. And when Red Alliance left, a lot of the iHubs changed hands, so they're pretty low strat index as well. Not all of them have the ability to have jump bridges and things in them.
How are the Curse locals reacting to your presence? The people from, I believe it's like Guardians of Tranquility and other fraternity-associated groups who use Curse for crabbing, farming.
I mean, they're just doing their thing. They kill us occasionally. We kill them occasionally. They're not really doing too much. We are not really going after them specifically, though. I think we reinforced one of their Athanors where we didn't do the armor timer, or they formed like 20 Gilas or something and just pushed off the like 15 US times of guys we had that were shooting it. So we're not really going after them. We're pretty much just going into Wicked Creek and Scodding Pass.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting development, right? We were talking, I think, a few weeks ago, saying, "Hey, keep an eye on Volta. These guys are going to be, I think, they're a hot thing for 2021." They've really kind of redefined what they're doing, as Suetonia mentioned. I think he had them as their most influential of 2020, just because of how they redefined themselves from the Thera boys to now conquering Declan in that area, pacifying it, installing people there, and now they're saying, "Hey, you know what? Instead of just sitting here and getting fat, we're deploying to the other side of the map." They're going full 180. They're going from the northwest to the southeast.
Fade?
Yeah, Fade and Declan all the way over to Wicked Creek and Kerr. So it's a huge move. And they're just saying, you know what, we're going to look at these people around here and we're going to fight them. And we're going to kind of give them everything we got. They're very strong in multiple time zones, so it's kind of dangerous for Fire Coalition people. I think I was talking to Starfleet, and he said XIX had renamed one of their keep stars to "We're ready for you, Volta" or something, and then Volta went and took the iHub all the way in that system, just completely nuked it. So they have like no iHub in their main staging system because Volta just took it. And of course, the Initiative are over here saying, "Hey, well, these guys are fighting my enemy. Let me fight with them." So that gives them a little bit more swagger. Even if they're working with the Imperium or not officially on contract, they do have the backing of the Initiative guys, because the Initiative, they want to help them. And it's an even better position for Volta too, because if the Initiative start creating timers elsewhere, Volta are now in catch or in curse. They can go anywhere that Initiative can. So if the Initiative is making some timers and they're lacking some numbers, Volta maybe just wanders over and says, "Hey, well, let me scratch your back a little bit here. You set these timers up for me. I'll help you. I don't have to do any work. I could just show up for these fights," which is what Volta want anyways. So it's like a very precarious position for the people, for Pappy in that area, because now it's not just the Initiative being annoying and starting to light fires. Now you've got Volta over there lighting more fires under Fire Coalition.
Yeah, and Fire Coalition had their State of the Alliance yesterday, I think, at 1600, and they've essentially announced that they are pulling all ships out of Delve. So that includes supers, subcapitals, all caps. Everything is moving from Delve back to Wicked Creek.
Yeah, that's a big. On paper, that's a big deal. Is it really a big deal, or how should we put this in perspective? Seems like it is.
It's not insignificant because you're forcing people to jump back and forth a little bit. You're putting a little bit of maybe mental pressure. You're making a hypothetical more of a reality, like we were talking about before. It's not just like, "Oh, I'm at war, this is fun." It's like, "Oh, I'm at war. Shit, my Citadel is being attacked. I got stuff in asset safety now. Like, what's going on? I can't jump back and forth so well." So it's just like a constant reminder that you're in this. You're basically locked horns with your enemy, and you're just staying there until one of you dies. So it very much feels like war. It's not derailing Pappy's stuff in Delve, but it is not insignificant in the slightest. And for just a morale perspective, compare World War B2 to World War B1. World War B1, you have, if you're in the Imperium side, you have allies falling off all over the place. You have CO2 swapping sides, betraying you. You have people ditching, and it just looks grim, right? World War B2, you have people coming to your aid. You have old members returning. You have people like big names like Grath and Elo that are coming to your side. You have, Volta coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, well, we'll help you. This is cool." You have all these things, and you have Siberian squads saying, "Hey, screw these legacy guys. We want you, Imperium. We want you." Yeah. So it's a complete night and day, which kind of, it must make you feel pretty good if you're the Imperium, because you can look back at this and say, "Hey, when we were losing in World War B1, these are the things that were happening. This is not happening anymore. We're getting allies. We're getting help. They're the ones that are starting to lose. So now they can use that to motivate their members to keep going, regardless of what happens, right? You can lose all of Helm's Deep, and you can say, hey, well, who cares? We got the Siberian Squad. We got Volta in here causing havoc. We took out their iHub. Like, their victories become your victories too. Like, you get to co-op those if you're like working with them. So it's a big thing.
That's a really important point. You get to co-opt their victories, I think, is an important point for morale. That's such a good point. What about Siberian Squad? What's the situation there? And how important is that group?
So they're moving, they've joined the Imperium, and I believe they're going to be going into Quirius and staging from Quirius and trying to, I guess, retake Quirius for Goonstorm, or at least do a lot of damage to Legacy there as they possibly can.
I was surprised they defected or left, because I remember after the destruction of GOTG, people thought that they were the higher quality member of that coalition, and then Legacy won got quite a strong alliance out of it. I didn't expect them to leave like this, especially since there will be. Well, they're going into a coalition with their former allies in GOTG, Ranger Regiment, and whatever remains of Darkness, and I believe Hanzo wasn't too keen on the performance of Ranger Regiment and the other members of the GOTG during that war.
Yeah, the Siberian Squads was definitely one of the most capable alliance of their coalition, and Hanzo Viper was their main and FC, but over the past year, they're not quite as active as they used to be. Like, if you look at Killboard activity recently, you can see that Severance, the Legacy Alliance, which holds a lot of the Sovereign Quirius, alone has a few times more kills than Siberian Squads, and significantly more active members. And one of the things is that, well, even though they had been given when they announced that they were going to be leaving Legacy, they said it would be in a couple of weeks' time. That was supposed to be coming up soon, so a lot of their members were still in Delve, still joining Legacy fleets, so they basically switched sides before they had pulled out of Legacy. So a lot of their members actually still have assets in Tests, Keepstar, and Delve, and other Legacy's infrastructure that they're now locked out of. So I think that was a disservice to their members that they handled it that way.
That doesn't sound like a good situation, but Suetonia?
I was going to say, we actually had intel earlier in Volta that they were going to go to 5ZX in Pure Blind, where they had a deployment for a while, and they were working with Bandalog since November. So I think this might have been something that they planned for a while, and it seems more like, something that they, I guess, decided to do with like a few weeks' notice or something.
Yeah, I thought as much. I thought that they were going to leave Legacy to help Bandalogs and the situation in Pure Blind, along with the Mordu's Legion space that Bandalogs lives in. I thought that because I know that Hanzo was FCing a lot for Bandalogs and fighting Volta there, but I didn't expect him to turn to the Imperium.
Oh yeah, that's what I was expecting too, because of how they were flying a lot with Banderlogs.
All right, this just in, Helm's Deep's already starting. We'll see this go on for the next few hours. IP6V TAC X iHub has changed or been destroyed, and imagine it will change hands to Pappy. That is one of possibly many happening in the next few hours. Again, we'll go to live coverage after this show.
Yeah, and I think it's more just, it's probably Hanzo wants to do what he enjoys doing, since Hanzo's never really liked the blobs, right? He prefers fights on the 50 to 100 man aside scale. That's what he was getting with Bandalog, so But with Volta deployed now, he's probably not going to get that with Bandalogs anymore. So I guess he's just going to deploy to Curious and probably fight, 50 to 100 man Severance Legacy Voltron gangs.
Yeah, that's my read on it as well, right? They deployed, they left. They're like, oh, this is too much. We don't want to be here. They went up north to try and get in on that action, and then that just evaporated, right? That evaporated right in front of them. Volta leaves. The frat guys start taking a little bit more dominant position out there. So he's just sitting up north saying, well, shit, there's nothing to do here, really, right? Am I going to run up against like all of fraternity? Let's dial it back. Let's come up with a new idea. Let me be a free agent over here. And then bam, you fall into the Imperium. And that's a huge win for the Imperium as well, right? You're talking Hanzo is a known FC, right? He's held up coalitions before, essentially.
Yeah, he was the only thing keeping GOTG from as anything resembling a functioning coalition a bit until they collapsed a bit over a year ago.
Yeah, but now he gets to do the same again, right? So he gets to hold up a region himself in a certain time zone. It'll be interesting to see the actual effect they have. They're not a small alliance, and the way these Russian groups tend to work is, they can, some of these members can go dormant for a few months at a time. Then when they come back and make a big wave, make a big splash, people start coming in, and then you start gaining momentum, right? So maybe some unaligned Russian-speaking pilots say, hey, you know what? These guys look cool. They're having fun, and then you start snowballing and snowballing and snowballing.
So this is something I've explained in the past, but you make deals with people who are in need, not people who don't need you. So I think if you're going to make a deal with somebody and it's going to be beneficial for you and you want to invest in a relationship, you do that when somebody needs your help. And Imperium, certainly on the surface of things, needs help. They're outnumbered. So if you're going to work for somebody, that's who you work for. You can extract more money out of them, or you can create a deeper and richer friendship because you helped them out when they were actually in a lot of trouble. So it's not always the case, but in this case, I can see people flipping over to the underdog side, right?
On the note of GOTG, one of the former GOTG members, Dracaris, has seen one of the big corp groups leave, Vision CN, and I believe they're Corporation Mechanical Force of Vision. Does anybody know what happened with Dracaris?
Oh yeah, we were told in the Daily Show channel that it was because that corporation was just kicked for non-participation in alliance ops.
Okay. I was going to write a message. I'll skip that. Okay. The last thing we want to look at, I'm in the wrong channel. Scrambling for notes. All right, Fire Coalition, Volta, Siberian Squad. And yesterday, if you weren't paying attention to our daily show and actually our now daily podcast, I talked to Noros yesterday about fraternity and what they're doing up north, and they have managed to put up 2 keep stars, one of them in MTACO. So MTACO has a keep star again. That keep star was put up by fraternity, but it doesn't belong to fraternity. It actually belongs to Null Secnia Schulpen, and they're the ones that are going to probably be living there. But Noros loves tribute. He has an affinity for it, Veil and tribute, but especially tribute. And so he's check out that whole interview. It's like a half hour to an hour with Noros, and he talks about a little bit of his history, but when we get into like what's going on up there in the north, but then he also talks about what happened here in Helm's Deep when, because there was this cartoon that came out, right? I don't know if we can find that, where they have a little character named Noros that runs into the wall. It's one of those goblins in Lord of the Rings, and he explodes the wall, and the wall goes flying everywhere. And I was like, why is Noros the goblin? Like, why'd they put him in there? And he explained that they had put together some like fast fleets, like AHAC fleets, and they had kind of rammed through that system and been countered by battleships and supercarriers, which couldn't really pursue, I guess. So he literally didn't stay and fight. He rammed through the gate system and then kept going, and that was kind of the beginning of the Helm's Deep attack that's happening now. So I didn't realize that had happened, but I thought that was pretty funny. Check out that interview. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for a while it seemed like that area, dude, if you were on the EU subreddit or anything, you would hear these rumblings of Frat versus the Free Men of the North, which is like the kind of group that was having their fight club up there, like Rogue Pell and all the toilet paper and them. And they were giving it to Frat. They were like making it very difficult for fraternity to make any progress. And then Keepstar drop supers on them, and then it kind of just feels a little bit more defeated. It's now not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when it's going to happen, that Frat's going to take over all the place.
It's like running. It's like a faucet, right? You can just see the water like start to trickle. You just like less people show up against you, and you've kind of siphoned off that flow of energy, and I think that's what's happening in the North now. But they put up a good fight before that.
And I think that's part of the reason why Volta decided to leave as well. Because they kind of, I'm sure they could see things coming, be like, oh yeah, this is going to look real nasty for us. We don't want to play in this time zone. We don't want to do this. Let's go over here to where there's more fights.
Well, now that contract, if it's a contract, which I think it is, I don't have any hard evidence, but that makes a lot more sense, right? Because fraternity is also involved in the South. Well, which side are they involved in? They're involved in the Pappy side. So if you wanted to actually, not that this is the case, but if you wanted to say, well, that sucks, fraternity, we're going to mess with you now. That is a way to mess with them, isn't it? To help their enemy in the South. I don't think it's that simple, but it does make logical sense.
Yeah, I don't think that really hurts fraternity too much, right? Like, oh, you're killing our allies. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Like, I think they don't care at all, especially for these people that were fighting them like a few months before, right?
Yeah, I could see that. It's funny. I think keep your eye on Naros, keep your eye on Gobbins. These two guys are very interesting, in my opinion. If I'm looking at the chessboard of EVE Online, those guys to me are very interesting. They're less brawlers, and they're more tactile, I think is the word that I would use. There was an interview done with I think it was Ebert, and he said, and they asked him like, well, which directors of film do you find interesting and innovative and that sort of stuff? And he goes, well, the one common denominator among all these directors that show a lot of promise, and he's talking about Scorsese and Coppola and even Steven Spielberg, and this is a long time ago, this was like in the 80s when they did this interview. He said the one thing they had in common was they liked touching the film, that they liked getting in there, they liked looking through the film into a light, they liked working with the actual product, they're tactile. That means they love everything about it, from the actual physical form of it to, of course, the story making and everything else. But they weren't just there for the parties. They weren't just there for the FaceTime. They were there for the work. And I think Noros is one of those guys. He's looking at the map, and I went on and a little bit of a side note when I was interviewing him, because I started looking at the map and I forgot where things were, and I was trying to describe where I lived or something. And I wasn't trying to like talk about my experience. I was impressed with how much he followed me to where I lived and wanted to look at all the area around it. It's almost like we were looking at the map together, and he's like, I'm pointing things out, showing him around. And he was very interested in that. So that little part of the segment wasn't about me. It was about his interest in how he liked the map, looked at where it led to, and how things were connected in a very visceral and tactile way, which I thought was fascinating. So that's Noros. Again, check out that interview. It's Friday. All right. Well, that's all I got. Do you guys have anything else? By the way, have I mentioned how much I love your outfit, Rich?
Oh, thank you. It's quite a robe.
Where's your teacup?
He's very dapper.
Teacup right here.
Go. There you go. Make no apologies. Own everything. I love it. Okay. Do we have anything else that we wanted to cover? You guys?
No, just keep an eye on Delve, right? It's going to be a huge brawl. It's going to be a constant like a constant burn too. It's not just going to be like one big fight and then like 2 days of nothing. There's going to be timers and fleets going out probably every hour for the next like week or so. Maybe not every hour like during the week, but there's going to be constant fleets during the week, constant fights, constant back and forth. If we're talking about these constellations behind E30, if they do fall, then that's more territory that the Imperium can start attacking and trying to gain back, forcing Pappy to kind of defend those things. So there's a lot of back and forth. The more you take from the Imperium, the more they get to attack. So that's going to be something that they'll be happy to do instead of having to defend in a war for so long. Sometimes becoming the attacker makes you feel a lot more better, changing gears, changing tactics, having some creative fun there.
Yeah. All right. What's going on in your neck of the woods there, Suetonia?
Oh, I mean, we're in Curse and we're just fighting.
That's right, with Volta. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. I know you were with Volta, but you come and go from Volta, right? Because I've seen you do your own thing. Or is that just when you're doing streaming?
Oh, when I stream, I normally do solo PvP, but I've been in Volta for the last year and a half, so I haven't left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you used to be all over, right? Like you were in Karma Fleet at one time, if I'm not mistaken, or...
Yeah, I was in Karma Fleet. I've been in Horde. I've been in Dreaded. I think I've been in like every single Nullsec coalition except for Winterco. So I normally just bounce between corps because I normally solo and I just play with my friends who are in different alliances. And I normally like to bounce around the newbie alliances because as a bit of vet that hangs out with like a lot of other bit of vets who are always like pretty mad about the game. It's always nice to join, a group like Horde or a group like Karma Fleet and just have like a bunch of newbies get excited over trivial things or or things that veterans would say are trivial, and that kind of brings the game back as a passion for you. I find. Yeah.
Funny enough, I started to look at some of the graphics, and I was like, "Hey, this game looks pretty good." So I was starting to play again, and I realized I don't know anything anymore. Like I was literally like undocking, and I was like, "Oh, did I update my clone?" Like I actually thought that in my process, my checklist. So it's been a while. And what's going on with you, Rich? You're in between gigs.
Yes, I departed my corp and onward to a new experience at Astra. Flying with different groups and looking to see what my next move is.
Do you have any preferred play style you're looking to get involved with?
Well, I believe Vili has offered to unblacklist me from test, but I have no intention to. I have no intention to return to nullsec or any kind of null coalition anytime soon. Most likely another small gang group, perhaps in lowsec or perhaps in,
wherever.
Obviously roaming nullsec.
Wherever they roam. All right.
Wherever small gangers go.
Let us know where you land. So that's why you put your nice coat on. You're available. I think I get it.
He's preening.
Unrestrained.
All right. Well, that's all we have today. Gregorian, Caleb, thanks for joining us. Give us some insight. Suetonia and Rich and Elise, thank you guys for coming here. And thank you guys for watching. We'll try to do some, not sure if there's going to be a lot to see after this show, but we'll go and look around and stream if there is some stuff. Maybe we can see some Skybreakers doing their thing. But for now, that is all we have here at Talking in Stations. We will see you next time on TIS. Thanks, guys.